for giving us the opportunity to present today. Really appreciate it. My name is David Yamron, and I'm joined on the phone by Sean Peabody. We are environmental incentives, and we work on the Measuring Impact project. Measuring Impact is a USAID project focused on helping the Office of Forestry and Biodiversity USA to implement best practices in the program cycle. And just before I move on, is there a way to get to full screen to presentation mode in PowerPoint? Oh, there it is. So the program cycle is essentially USAID's version of an adaptive management cycle. The focus is on using learning and adapting. You can see learning and adapting in a circle in the center of the chart there, to influence future program design and policy. Here is kind of a more detailed version of the program cycle. You can see it's fairly simple. We start with number 1, program design, moving around to 2, implementation, 3, evaluating past programs, and then 4 and 5, learning and adapting from those programs, using lessons learned to influence future design. So the traditional problem with this cycle is the learning and adapting piece, right? That organizations are unable to bring those lessons learned in a full circle to influence future program design and policy. And that's really our job at Measuring Impact. What we're doing is working with the Office of Forestry and Biodiversity to close that loop and bring those lessons learned around full circle. So we use Miradi to support USAID with that. Often this involves helping specific USAID missions or the Forestry and Biodiversity Washington office to develop conceptual models or what they call USAID situation models, as well as results chains. However, we've recently been piloting in kind of an interesting new approach for generic situation or conceptual models for use across missions. For example, this is a generic conceptual model for combating wildlife crime. It shows common scopes, common drivers, and common threats that can be applied across a variety of contexts, variety of regions, countries, missions, and species. And this model, the intent of this model is to be used by different missions, implementing partners who can use this as a base or as a template, apply customized drivers, scopes, and threats, customized to their conditions. And ultimately, the intent here is to develop kind of a common monitoring and evaluation infrastructure, which can compare changes across scales. We can also do the same thing with result chains. So this is, again, combating wildlife crime example that maps general assumptions, general project logic, and generic activities, which can then be customized in a variety of local contexts. And the idea is that can bring these across different contexts in order to develop a common M&E infrastructure and a common language that can work across different scales. We also use Miradi internally. This is the internal Measuring Impact project results chain. And we use Miradi for work planning as well. This is something that Annette actually helped us with when she was working out of our office in Washington. You can see that's one of our strategic approaches there with different activities under it. And then those gray dots are our deliverables. We are starting to use Miradi and flow process. The intent is that we'll roll out this evaluation plan to start documenting against our indicators within Miradi in the latter half of FY16. So that's essentially how we use Miradi. I know that one important part of this is feature requests. So we've been talking a little bit internally and a couple different things that we think might be interesting in future releases. It would be nice if new activities would display on diagrams by default. You know, you have to go in right now into each activity and select that display option. One interesting idea that Sean Peabody came up with was the ability to expand and contract group boxes into a single result. So you have a group box with maybe 4 or 5 results within it. It would be nice if that could maybe contract into a single result and display a simplified version of your results chain, maybe for different audiences. The final feature request that we have is the ability to open more than one Miradi file at a time, I think. Probably heard that one before, but that'll be very useful. So that's all from me right now. I'm not sure if we move on to questions or from here.
Yep, thanks, David. And okay, so it says David's voice is a bit distorted, but I guess that can be the microphone on his computer. So hopefully everyone was able to hear enough of David's presentation that, that it was useful. And yeah, any other questions? And yes, just a reminder from Doug Pearsall, and I was going to say the same thing. So it is possible to open multiple Miradi files at a time. You just open different instances of Miradi. So you can actually open a whole bunch of Miradi files at the same time and copy and paste from one to another. But it sounds like maybe that is something we should do in a future session, is work through opening multiple projects at the same time and copying and pasting. So I'm noting that as a future potential topic.
Okay. That is great to hear. I apologize for that.
No,
thank you very much.
That's why we're all here, learning from each other. So any last questions before I turn it over to Dan for our next presentation?
Just one thing, this is Sean Peabody. On that last point, that's not something I've found you're able to do on Mac unless you have different versions of Miradi installed. So if you've got an older version of Miradi, you can open that up, but it won't let you open up more than one instance. At least I've not been able to figure that out.
Yeah, we should work with you. You can actually just copy the application a number of times. I think I've had up to 4 open at the same time. So we should definitely provide some guidance on how to do that for folks on a Mac.